Good morning. Thank you for coming. This is about what used to be called Burma, is now called Myanmar or Myanmar. And we'll talk about the interchangeable use of those two terms. I was there in December 2012. I'm sort of cheating on this. I'd been there before, like 15 years before that, but I don't have any pictures from that. And all I ever got to was Yangon, which used to be called Rangoon. And this trip I went to Pecan, but I haven't been to Mandalay or up the Irrawaddy River or any of those exciting places, and I'd like to go back and see those. So you're not getting the whole country, just a sample. And, well, you'll see. Is a map of Burma. What's interesting about it, among other things, is you can see it squeezed between Bangladesh, and now we're hearing about these refugees that go to Bangladesh, and you can see why. It's just next door. And India, China, which has its eye sort of on Burma, Vietnam, Laos, Thailand, and Cambodia. So if you've been to any of those places, you'll recognize some of the architecture. Even Bali, the architecture in Bali, some parts of Bali look very much like the architecture that we're going to see in Pecan. I started in Yangon, which used to be Rangoon, at the bottom there, and took a flight to Pecan, which, my equipment here, in the middle somewhere. Hello. No, this is not working today. There we go. So Pecan is up here. And this is the Irrawaddy River. Has anybody taken the, well, first of all, has anybody been to Burma? I can't see here, but who's that back there?
Diane.
Oh, hi, Diane. Hi. Did you go to Mandalay?
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yes.
So someday you'll tell us about that. We're not going to hear much about Mandalay today. But there is a very nice, lots of different cruises up the Irrawaddy River to Mandalay. So these are some of, this is a picture, I didn't see anybody look like this, but there are many, many ethnic groups there. And what's happening to some of them, the Rohingyas, the one we hear about, is that they seem to be being exterminated or eradicated or asked to move. These are three ethnic groups that are, seems to be, they're having to leave. And I don't know that these particular people are the costumes of those groups, but there are many of them that are not necessarily Burmese, and so that's what's going on there now. Very sad, actually. So you can see where, we'll call it Burma today, Burma fits into this whole big, huge continent there. And you can also see where the rivers are, and around the rivers are mountains areas. So there are three mountain chains that divide the three river systems, the Irrawaddy, the Salween, and the Satang rivers. The Irrawaddy is the longest river. Diane, you remember how long it took you to go from Rangoon to Mandalay?
I think we flew.
You flew? Oh, that's another possibility. That doesn't take long. So there are fertile plains in the valleys between the mountain chains, and that's where the majority of people live, about around here. This is our guide. What struck us right away is this stuff that's on her face. And of course we asked her about that. She was a very good guide, by the way. And she said it's some kind of makeup. It's not, doesn't seem to have any medicinal purpose, but everybody wears it, practically everybody. So Myanmar is divided into 7 states and 7 regions. The regions are predominantly Bamar, that is mainly inhabited by the dominant ethnic group. States, in essence, are regions that are home to particular ethnic minorities, which we'll talk about. This is interesting that Burma was long considered a pariah state
Yes.
Well, under the rule of an oppressive military junta from
50 years.
1962 to 2011. It's a long time, and people didn't go there very often. I think I first went there actually in 1970, and it was under that rule, and it was quite oppressive, and we weren't allowed to go very many places except to Rangoon. I have to say something about that. We spent a couple of days in Rangoon, and then we're going to India, and there was a huge typhoon. So we were forced to spend another couple of days in Burma. But this time we stayed in India Lake in a Russian-built huge hotel that was used for gem shows. Burma is very big on precious gems, semi-precious gems. But anyway, it was under the junta, and the generals who ran the country suppressed almost all dissent and stood accused of gross human rights abuses, prompting international condemnation and sanctions. A general liberation began in 2010, leading to free elections in 2015, and the installation of a government led by veteran opposition leader Aung San Suu Kyi the following year. We'll talk about her a little later. But an army operation against alleged terrorists in Rakhine State since August 2017 has driven more than 500,000 Muslim Rohingyas to flee to neighboring Bangladesh, which is one of the least prepared countries to take 500,000 new people. But the United Nations called a textbook example of ethnic cleansing, and I looked and looked and looked and do not have a good explanation for why this is happening. So there's Burmese language, and then there's all these minority languages. The major religion is Buddhism. Not everybody is Buddhist, and the life expectancy is sort of average. Yangon is now the largest city, but it's not the capital. It's the capital is some obscure city that I don't even know where it is or why it got that way, but Rangoon used to be the capital. It has markets and parks and lakes. Quite an interesting city. Myanmar rates as a corrupt nation on the Corruption Perception Index with a rank of 136 out of 176 countries. That is, the higher you go, the more corrupt you are. I'm not sure where we rank these days. So this is pictures from Rangoon. You can see it's quite nice. I'm not sure how nice these apartments are. They're not the fanciest. So Myanmar is one of the poorest nations in Southeast Asia. I think Afghanistan and something else come after. Suffering from decades of stagnation, mismanagement, and isolation. The lack of an educated workforce skilled in modern technology hinders Myanmar's economy. The major agricultural product is rice, which covers about 60% of the country's total cultivated land area. So that's what they have, and not too much else. Even though this church is there and very prominent in downtown Myanmar, most people are Buddhists. There's a pretty lady waiting for a bus. The bus system in Myanmar is very good because people don't have there's not many cars there. The sarong is worn both by men and women. It's a very comfortable outfit and very colorful. It comes in all kinds of different materials. Here's a marketplace, sort of interesting in its diversity. Fruit and vegetables, of course. Music. Not sure what instrument that is. This is the pieces of cloth that you make sarongs out of. And just in case you want to be fashionable in Burma, you can get your high-heeled shoes in this shopping center. I'm not sure. I think these are some kind of dates. And berries, maybe coffee, I'm not sure. How many of you had a durian?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Did you like the taste?
No.
Yes.
Yes? There's somebody back there. So
It
in my-
tasted good, but it smelled bad.
there you go. Tastes good, but smells bad. Yeah, it's a wonderful texture, velvety texture, tastes like chocolate, but it smells, somebody said it smells like eating ambrosia in the bathroom. It's very smelly, and if you can't take durians into most hotels because Once you cut it open, it gets into the air conditioning system, and the whole place smells forever.
Excuse me.
But fortunately, there's durian ice cream and other treats made of durian, so you can get the delicious chocolatey taste. Here's a new president, relatively new, with his wife. And he's an ally of Aung San Suu Kyi, but what he's doing these days about the Rohingya problem, I don't know. He's not a priest. So, I was originally just going to do a travelogue. You know, this is pretty Burma, and these are the sights you see. But really, there's a serious problem there, and people were asking, was I going to talk about the politics? So, here's a little bit about the politics. We know that more than 100,000 Rohingyas continue to live in camps for internally displaced persons, and more than those have gone out of the country. Rohingyas have received international attention in the wake of the 2012 Rakhine state riots and its aftermath. The situation there is pretty grim. Rohingya people have consistently faced human rights abuses by the Burmese regime. It has refused to acknowledge them as Burmese citizens, despite some of them having lived in Burma for over 3 generations. They are, by the way, Muslim, and of course, Burma is Buddhist, although that doesn't seem to account for why they're so persecuted. The Rohingya have been denied Burmese citizenship since the enactment of a 1982 citizenship law, which I don't have all the particulars. I was just reading about the laws in South Africa, and these are very similar. So there's 3 categories of citizenship: citizenship, associate citizenship, and naturalized citizenship. So just to show how complicated it is, citizenship is given to those who belong to one of the national races, and there's a whole list of them here, which includes Rakhine. I'm not sure where the Rohingyas don't come in there. Associate citizenship is given to those who cannot prove their ancestors settled in Myanmar before 1823, but can prove they have one grandparent or pre-1823 ancestor who was a citizen of another country, as well as people who applied for citizenship in 1948, qualify then by those laws. And then there's a whole category of naturalized. So it sounds a lot like apartheid. It sounds like the Jewish laws. It sounds like the black laws in this country, whether you were, 1/8, 1 drop of black blood and you were black. These laws managed to eliminate the Rohingyas as possible citizens. They're referred to as one of the world's most persecuted minorities. Myanmar lacks adequate infrastructure. Goods travel primarily across the Thai border, where most illegal drugs are exported, and along the Irrawaddy River. Railroads are old and rudimentary. There are trains that go through, but not recommended. In recent years, both China and India have attempted to strengthen ties with the government for economic benefit, and as you can imagine, they're practically next door. Many nations, including the United States and Canada and the European Union, have imposed investment and trade sanctions on Myanmar, though the U.S. and European Union eased most of their sanctions in 2012, when there was a semblance of democracy. It looked like it was going to happen. Foreign investment comes primarily from China, Singapore, the Philippines, South Korea, India, and Thailand. And you can see how easily that leaves out the Western Hemisphere. This is definitely an Eastern country. I don't know how many of you here when I showed a slideshow comparing Singapore and Burma. Anybody remember that? And they're almost next to each other, have similar populations ethnically and not really, and the same size, and the difference between them in economic development is phenomenal, largely due to the form of government the 2 countries had. Singapore had a very forward-looking government, and Burma's had this constant ethnic wars with a very repressive government. So, continues to perform badly in the Global Environmental Performance Index, which is surprising. It does not seem like a polluted country, but it is worst in air quality, health aspects of environmental issues, and biodiversity and habitat. It's best in the impact of fisheries. They do save some species before they're overfished. And also the agricultural industry, because they use the nitrogen cycle when they grow their rice. This is a little pudding that I sampled, pretty good. Now that may surprise you, but that goes with the high heels. I'm not sure who the population is that buys the high heels and this underwear, but must be somebody. I guess there are a lot of foreign people there. And these are puppets, male puppets. So 25% of the legislators are appointed by the military, and the rest elected by general elections. This is a painting that was in one of the stores. Myanmar is one of the poorest nations in Southeast Asia, suffering from decades. I think I said that. Yeah, I said that. Very sad when you see it. It's a beautiful country with lovely people. Here's a store, souvenir store, if you can find what you want here. It's a miracle. So the Shwedagon Pagoda is very famous. Anybody that I missed? Diane, did you go to Shwedagon?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Anybody else? Nancy? There you are. It's an amazing thing. I was there when I was there many years ago in the daytime and then again at night. But since then I've gotten older, and taking my shoes and socks off was a big sacrifice because it's very hard to walk around barefoot, and it's huge. And there it is from the outside. The Buddhist relics, I think, are 2 strands of Buddha's hair. And it dates from the 6th century, which is really remarkable, especially in an earthquake, a typhoon zone like Burma is. This is real, gilded with real gold. This is about, oh, it's December, so it's about 7 o'clock at night. It's dark out, but filled with people, very active.
Where did they get the gold?
Good question. Where did they get the gold? There's no gold mines in Burma, as far as I know. I don't know. Trade, yeah, maybe. This is interesting little snippet. A number of monks' organizations that played a vital role in Myanmar's struggle for democracy have taken measures to block any humanitarian assistance to the Rohingya community. This is so unlike what we know about Buddhism, or what we think we know about Buddhism, that it's really hard to figure out what's going on. Beautiful structures in there, really amazing. Here's somebody's guide. We were probably in there an hour, hour and a half. It's huge. Burma has a glut of young people who can't get jobs, who are moving to the city.
So how do they live?
I don't know.
They walk, they hitchhike.
Well, the public transportation system within Yangon is very good.
They must be with the parents.
This is a bad picture, but it was so touching to see this young woman, young girl, praying, I guess, in her white, pretty dress. It's a very, I don't know who that is, does not look like a Buddha. This may be our tour group, I'm not sure. You know, I practiced Buddhism for a while. I think many people did. And in Zen Buddhism, Buddha is never deified. He's just another person that has achieved enlightenment. So there are many sects of Buddhism, including the one predominantly in Burma, that has deified the Buddha. And these many, many statues are examples. That's the sitting Buddha. There are many sitting Buddhas around Southeast Asia. This one is a particularly nice one. Although it does look like a woman.
It does. Amazing.
Somebody's reading, I guess, the equivalent of the Bible there.
We can wear shoes ourselves.
I guess it would be the Quran. And this makes a beautiful gong. but even Shwedagon has to be swept. So there she is, Aung San Suu Kyi, and as you know, she received the Nobel Prize for her work in Burma, and now people are a little wary about her. The role of president, you saw the president and his wife, but that role is largely ceremonial since the end of military rule in 2016. So she is effectively leading the government in the role of state counsel. She's barred from taking the Burmese presidency under the military drafted constitution because her sons are British citizens. You remember her husband was too. The reputation of Aung San Suu Kyi, a long-term leader of the pro-democracy movement, was battered in 2017 by her government's treatment of the Muslim Rohingya community.
Yeah, terrible.
And look, as I may, I couldn't find any statement by her, any explanation by her about why she's been so silent about this. In 1962, there was a coup d'etat followed by an economic scheme called the Burmese Way to Socialism, a plan to nationalize all industries with the exception of agriculture. The catastrophic program turned Myanmar into one of the world's most impoverished countries. Myanmar's admittance to least developed country status by the UN in 1987 highlighted its economic bankruptcy, a very sad experiment. So after being in Yangon for a couple of days, we flew to Pecan, which is noted for its many, many temples. You can see it's a very crowded airport. The airlines are very well used. What I didn't find out is how many Burmese airlines there are. Okay, it's a Buddhist country, but Christmas appears everywhere. This was December. So. Surprisingly, a lot of newspapers, although the freedom of press is rather curtailed, fairly recently, well, December 2017, 2 Reuters journalists were charged and imprisoned for violating state secrets law when they were covering the mass exodus of the Rohingya Muslim population. I think they got quite a long prison term. Oops, I don't have a map of Bagan right there. There's the face makeup again, and she's got typical Burmese features, but she's wearing Western clothes. Here's the waiting room. Asian Wings Airways is the one we took, and I'm not sure it's the only Burmese airline, but it's okay. I mean, at least it didn't crash. There it is. Advertisement for it. Flight attendants. Rohingya are not allowed to travel without official permission. They are banned from owning land and are required to sign a commitment to have no more than 2 children. As of July 2012, the Myanmar government does not include the Rohingya minority group, classified as stateless Bengali Muslims from Bangladesh. Since 1982, on the government's list of more than 130 ethnic races, and therefore the government states they have no claim to Myanmar citizenship. This is Pecan, big tourist destination. Formerly Pagan, an ancient city located in the Mandalay region of Myanmar, not too close to Mandalay though. From the 9th to the 13th centuries, the city was the capital of the Pagan kingdom, the first kingdom that unified the regions that would later constitute modern Myanmar. During the kingdom's height, between the 11th and 13th century, over 10,000 Buddhist temples, pagodas, and the remains of over 2,200 temples and pagodas. Oh, that's not and, that's a semicolon. The remains of over 2,200 temples and pagodas are still there. Interestingly, though, when the typhoon came and there was earthquakes, many of the temples were destroyed, and they were recreated by the Burmese government. But that area is not a World Heritage Site because they were not recreated accurately the way they had been 2,200 years ago, or whatever it was. So they lost their designation as a World Heritage Site. But this is a lot of welcoming because it is a big moneymaker for tourists. These people are from Thailand, to me, it looks like. So there was a welcoming committee, dancers, and costumes and music. And you can see some Westerners in the background. Very elaborate costumes, which of course you don't see every day. And a gift shop. And very lavish place. This is not a picture that I took, but it's tourists walking through Bagan. Right in the, as you come out of the airport, there's lots of advertisements for some very nice looking hotels. The one we stayed in was very luxurious, very beautiful, but there are other hotels there too. But these not where we stayed, but very nice. And you can take balloon rides over Bagan. We had a nice bus with amazingly pretty curtains. But this is how it looked when we drove through Bagan, the city center. There's a cheap hotel and a people's restaurant. Even the baby has the makeup on. I really should get a better description of this. We asked our guide, and I forgot what she said. Beautiful hand carving there. There's a lot of beautiful craftsmanship in Burma. I'm not sure what these are. Plates, maybe?
Paperweights.
Paperweights, maybe. Seemed to be a lot of good produce. Although it looks very peaceful, it was, first of all, very hot. And second of all, we were hounded by kids who you would think would be in school for either handouts or to buy postcards or something like that. There's preservation of much of the environment and ecosystems. Forests, including dense tropical growth and valuable teak in lower Myanmar, cover 49% of the country. So they're very good about husbanding their forest resources. I hope that dog was not for dinner. I'm not sure. I thought these women were fascinating. Some nice pottery. Purple radishes, I think. Tourists mixed in with the natives, and here's a woman carrying stuff on her head. Of course, the tourists were a big deal there. That is a source of income, major source of income for the people of Bagan. Very much like Indonesian puppets. I don't think compulsory education is a big thing there. We saw a lot of little kids working and begging. This is the two Reuters journalists who were documenting the massacre of the Rohingya, and they face up to 14 years in prison. I don't know if they've been tried yet or not.
That law was British. They're still in the British Empire.
I don't know. They're not in the Commonwealth. They chose not to be in the Commonwealth when they got their
Can you go
freedom.
back
But they seem to use some of the British laws. Yeah. This is a very busy, interesting picture of what goes on in downtown Bagan. I really like it, so I took out excerpts from it. This is one thing that's going on there. Horses and carriage, primarily for the tourists, of course. Bicycle, or motorcycle, or motorbike, I guess it is. Common way of traveling. And horses and carriages again. This one's very elaborate. And here's some books on both of these areas. He looks sort of sinister. I don't know what he is. And paintings and photographs of the area that people are selling. The population is growing pretty quickly, so I'm not sure what the population policy is, but judging from this picture, there isn't any. People were following us. We are on a bus, and every time we went anywhere, from market to market or market to anywhere, another bus would follow us, and these people would pour out and try to sell us things through our windows. They were beautiful things. These are Burmese silk things that are very nice. I restrained myself. This was a young woman who looked like she had a lot of experience selling to tourists. I hope she was just selling clothes. So these are some of the things inside the wall. This is where you get your pots. And these are some musicians. The Pecan Archaeological Zone is a main attraction for the country's nascent tourism industry. It's seen by many as equal in attraction to Angkor Wat in Cambodia. How many of you been to Angkor Wat? It's really not equivalent at all, I don't think. A lot of people know a lot more about these temples than I do, and also had more energy to explore. Most that I can say for them is they're amazingly beautiful in their construction and their design, but I don't really know one from another. These are rules. A guide put these up. The no shoes part is really hard.
Interesting.
When I first looked at this picture again, I thought there was a wedding or something going on in front of this temple, but not so. It's tourists. If you've been to Bali or you saw my show about Bali and Ubud, the architecture is almost identical, the colors and the designs. Of course, it's Buddhist there too. This is December, and it's very hot, and you can see the flowers blooming. A gift store. Some of these are quite beautiful. It looks like Nefertiti, but I don't. So. Puppets all over Southeast Asia. This is how people get around. They're very resourceful people. My travel is always to learn about the culture as it exists now, and I'm not great on archaeology or anthropology, so I was very interested to see how these people live, and the number of young people around who don't look like they're actually working, but they're very happy that the tourists are there. Not sure what those bags are. Sand, I think. Part of Pecan is on the Irrawaddy River, but I don't think it floods. No. These are really amazing. And there are not that many left. I mean, there are many left, but not from the original. Brickwork is amazing. You can see that some of it is new brickwork. This is a cemetery, I think. She is bringing clothes to catch up with the tourists, with us, so she can sell them to us. That's an amazing piece of architecture. Stupa. commercial picture. It's a monumental piece of art. Heads are very convenient to carry things on. A lot of horses are
They
there.
need something that big on your head.
This is a kid, I don't know what he's selling there. It's either food or, I don't know. But behind him is a bike. In front of him is a horse. And there's also a car. Which is what the villages look like with all this things going on there. These look like they escaped from Shwedagon. Wrong. This is so common in Southeast Asia. Postcard, $1. Very nice postcards, good bargain actually. Not sure what that is. Maybe a hotel. So we were taken for lunch to this, I think the same hotel that we stayed in, and it was a big tower, maybe 10 stories tall, on the top of which was a very nice restaurant which served delicious food. Anybody like Burmese food around here? We were just in San Francisco and found a Burmese restaurant that was very good, outstanding. So this is one view from our tower, and you can see those cottages like we stayed in, which are part of the hotel. Cottages, underestimated them. The Pecan temple falls in, here's some educational stuff, falls into one of two broad categories, the stupa style, solid temple, and the hollow temple. The stupa, also called a pagoda, is a massive structure, typically with a relic chamber inside. Pecan era stupas, in turn, were the prototypes for later Burmese stupas in terms of symbolism, form, and design, building technique, and even materials. So some of these designs date from 2,000 years ago almost. And then as the architecture evolved, the shape of the stupa and the shape of the temples changed too. So you can see why, that's why there are different forms besides the new ones that were rebuilt. This is a view from the tower too. That looks like an original stupa. And that looks like a rebuilt temple, but I don't know.
This is from your hotel?
No, it's from the restaurant.
Yeah.
The hotel was on flat land, but the restaurant was about 10 stories high. The restaurant was part of the hotel. These are the cottages in the hotel where we ultimately stayed. These are some panoramic pictures, and you can see in the background is the Irrawaddy River. Back here, that's what that is. And here's another panoramic shot with two very well-known temples. This one, and these. This is not, I was not in this balloon, but it looked good. There's the Irrawaddy River. You can get a very good idea of what that looks like. So it looked like to you, Diane?
I was never in Pecan.
Did you stop in Pecan?
No, I
No.
was not in Pecan.
Oh, interesting.
We went to Mandalay.
Oh. This was in our hotel. This is an amazing wood carving, I think, near our hotel. That's the name of our hotel. I'm not sure what Orion is, but very luxurious. I have to say how I got here, and that is, this was the second time. First time was actually we were tourists. The second time was my girlfriend and I were on a tour. We're on a cruise, an Azamara cruise. Anybody take Azamara lines any time? It's a very good line, and the main part of it is it stops in places like overnight and will put you up in a hotel. So actually on that cruise we started in Chennai in India and wound up in Singapore, and we had 3 hotel stays, and those were part of the cruise. This was not part of the cruise, but you could pay extra to stay in this hotel in Bagan overnight. I thought that was great. So this is where they put us up. You can see the Christmas tree in the background. And then we had a night show. Pretty good food. Dancers were, I have no idea how authentic. They seemed a little phony to me, but what do I know? So here's something that you might know. In English, the country is popularly known as Burma or Myanmar. Both these names are derived from the name of the majority Burmese Bamar ethnic group. Myanmar is considered to be the literary form of the name of the group, while Burma is derived from Bamar, the colloquial form of the group's name. So, according to this, the names are interchangeable. They were dancing, looked good to me. I don't know whether authentic Burmese dancers are so quite made up and shiny, but they were good dancers. And the dinner was delicious. Here is the hotel in the morning. This is our cottage. Everybody had their own cottage. So my girlfriend and I had this cottage, or cottage like it, which was bigger than certainly my apartment here, and maybe any place I've ever lived. I don't know. And air conditioned, I might say. Here's our neighborhood with all these cottages in it. And somebody would come and pick us up and give us a ride to the main hotel. Ours was the Orchid, this lovely statue in front. This is our apartment or cottage or whatever you call it. Beautifully done, beautiful woods, beautiful floors, beautiful furnishings. That's me in the back there. Lovely living room, fantastic bathroom with, but also a huge tub with hot water and things in it. Christmas was being observed, of course. I've gone all over the world to avoid Christmas, and it's not avoidable. I find it that even the deepest Muslim countries or Buddhist countries all celebrate Christmas. So it's my observation. A fabulous breakfast buffet. That might have been the tower from which I took the pictures, I'm not sure. It's an entrance to something. The spa, oh that's right, it was the entrance to the spa. Very lovely tower. Crumbling. Myanmar is a country rich in jade and gems, oil, natural gas, and other mineral resources. In 2013, its GDP stood at 56.7 billion, and its GDP per person, no, not per person, it's 225. I'm not sure what the difference is. But the income gap in Myanmar is among the widest in the world, as a large proportion of the economy is controlled by supporters of the former military government. As of 2016, Myanmar ranks 145 out of 188 countries in human development, according to the Human Development Index, which means there's not much room for people to explore their potential in the job market or even in the government, because the military still has control so much of the government. Which is just the opposite of Singapore, where the Human Development Index is very high. There's a little Burmese Santa Claus in there. Here's some pictures of more people. So this is just a note about Mandalay. Is a city in the former royal capital in northern Myanmar on the Irrawaddy River. Was it Bob Hope that did a road to Mandalay? I can't remember, where the flying fishes play. So in the middle is the restored Mandalay Palace. from a long time ago dynasty surrounded by a moat. Mandalay Hill provides views of the city from its summit, which is reached by covered stairway. At its foot, the Shwedagon Pagoda houses hundreds of Buddhist monks. But this is not part of the tour because I didn't get there. Hopefully, would like to get there. If you're interested in tours of the Irrawaddy River, it's very interesting if you Google it, because some of these boats are very luxurious, and it looks like an interesting trip. Would you say, Diane, it was?
I did not take a trip on that.
Oh, you flew, that's right,
No.
sorry. I'm thinking you flew. Inyo Lake is where we stayed when the typhoon came and we couldn't cross to India. It was a huge hotel, as I said, built by the Russians, which once a year houses a very important gem show where people come from all over the world to buy these gems. It was clearly built by the Russians, or very big Russians or something. The door handles were way high and the ceilings were way high, and the dining room was huge with very large ceilings, but the place was air conditioned. And you have to wonder that all the electricity from the entire country went into air conditioning this huge hotel. It was a very interesting experience to stay there. This is when Aung San Suu Kyi came to the United States, met with our friends Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and no, her home.
Oh, hell.
They came to her home, that's right. That was a big milestone for Burma to have them visit. She was a shining light. I went to the Nobel Museum in Oslo, and there was a lot about her because she got her prize there. So that's it for Myanmar, and
Unbelievable.
some of you were here for the last presentation on Kyrgyzstan, and you wanted to know a little bit about Kyrgyzstan, so I'm going to tell you a little bit. You don't have to stay for this if you're not interested, but we know it's bordering China, and it became independent with the collapse of the Soviet Union. It was one of the old parts of the Soviet Union. It has some oil and gas and a developing gold mining sector, but relies on imports for most of its energy needs. It's a very poor country. Resentment at widespread poverty and ethnic divisions between North and South have spilled over into violence. And the country's first two post-Soviet presidents were swept from power by popular discontent. This is not obvious to a tourist, at least was not to me, because it occurs in the southern part of Kyrgyzstan. Settled by Kyrgyz tribes from southern Siberia in the 17th century, the area was ruled by various regional powers before coming under Russian and then Soviet rule. Most of its 6 million people are Turkic-speaking Muslims. It's very interesting because so are the Uyghurs in China. In 2000, which is why they have Uyghur food, of course. In 2014, when I was there and when I showed these pictures last month, I showed the U.S. Army Air Force Base. And I showed, I think, soldiers eating the ice cream there. Gone. It's shut. Why? I'm not sure. But that's what we use as a base to supply troops in Afghanistan. So, but Russia still has a military air base there. So there's 6 million people there, occupies a fairly large area, not densely populated. The languages are Kyrgyz and Russian. Most major religions are Islam and Christianity, and the life expectancy is about average. So I hope that clears up any.
What accounts for the low death, the 67-year-old?